the first thing you assemble from the kit is the rudder. So I've got out the list of all the parts and found the rudder section, and then gone through and found all the different parts for the rudder, and I've gone and put little tick marks. I've got them all sitting out here. I've got all of them so far except the nose skin. Haven't found that, and these parts here, but from the instructions it sounds like you don't do them until the fuselage, so I'm not too worried about that. I had to go digging to find some of those parts, especially the ribs and things in the box of aluminum hardware, and that's involved taking out a lot of the stuff that's in there, which has just ended up on my new bench. It's looking like a mess already, but it is what it is. There's some more of the stuff that's come out of that box. But anyway, got to the bottom of that, and I've got all the bits for my rudder, and I've got my computer in the corner so I can fire up the builder's manual on that and hopefully end up with a rudder in the next couple of days. Just unpacked all the different tools that I think I need for the rudder out of the toolkit. Got all the different size clecos. Not sure which ones. Might be I think it's the A4 rivets is used for most of it, which might be the smaller ones. I don't know. Definitely not the bigger ones. Anyway, I've got the cleco pliers, which I've never used before. I have not built an aircraft before, but it seems straightforward enough. You chuck it in there, and then the back of it gets pushed, and that extends, or makes more sense when you look at it this way. So when you put it in, it gets narrower, throw that through the hole, and then when you release it, you'll see it expands, which is of course how it holds things together temporarily. And then a couple of clamps. It looks like these are shown in the building guide, so I've got them out. Drill bits, which so far I don't have the air compressor, so I can't use my air drill, but I do have some battery drills that I may or may not use. We'll see. And some files and markers, and that's probably enough to get started. I'll get back to the manual and see how I go, see what the first steps look like. What the heck are these clamps? I do not understand how they are to be used. So I get they open and they lock closed. I'll screw that out slightly. That'll lock and that'll put pressure. That's all well and good, but these clamps here that I'm using here, they don't have an adjustment for the thickness, so they just lock. That's pretty simple. But these ones, I thought, well, okay, there's this bolt, surely it's to adjust the thickness or to be able to lock them. So what I need actually is to be able to lock them when this is well screwed out, like that. Because I needed to clamp around this spar flange. So I need to be able to go like that and then clamp. But the problem I have is they start hitting the flange. So I assumed that these clamps were, or I do assume these clamps are somehow meant to be able to get around flanges like that. So what I ended up doing is I grabbed some other aluminum hardware and ended up putting this just across, which on both sides. It was a pair, it's the shoulder harness attachment of all bits. And that meant I've been able to just clamp it down there and clamp it down there, and it does have the added benefit of centering it quite nicely. So it's not all too bad, but it did take me a wee while to figure out how I was going to do that. And you might be able to see the lines showing up in those holes down the middle, which is how you mark a centre line like I've done across here, which I'm guessing is probably for the skins, but you do the same thing on the end flange, and then you line them up through those holes, and that's how you know you've got it right this way. So I'm going to drill those holes and get on with it. Out. I've got the rudder skeleton completed, so we'll click it together and looking pretty good. Managed to get these front, what are they called, front things, managed to get them on and centered. So there's that one there and this one. These ones in the middle are a lot easier because they're self-centering in that they're sitting inside the flange of the spar, so it's pretty hard to get them wrong. And you can just put them in there, line them up, and away you go. And you can also clamp them from this corner, so you don't have a problem. You don't have a clearance problem getting your clamp in there. But these front ones needed a little more creativity. But we got there, and it's looking pretty good, I think. I'm quite happy with how it went. This is all from the first part one of the instructions, the guide, the builder's manual. And part two is all about putting the skin on it. However, before I get to that, I'll need to consider what I'm doing, whether I'm priming stuff. And so far the plan is to prime all the mating surfaces, so all in between where things get riveted together. I don't think I'm going to prime the whole thing. I don't think it's going to be necessary for what I'm planning to do. And yeah, exciting, went well. The drill was not ideal, it's a little bit big. Getting into some of these spaces or more back there, you have to really flex this out of the way to fit the drill back there to get it square and drill straight holes. So not ideal, but we got it done. And hopefully I'll get my air drill functional, because that's a lot smaller and you can get that into tighter spaces. But yeah, look at that, pretty happy. Tuesday afternoon, and I've just finished a bit of a second coat on a lot of the parts, spars and ribs for the rudder. I've been using this zinc phosphate green primer. Looks like the green primer you see everywhere, which maybe more often is zinc chromate, which is, well, it's a carcinogenic. So trying to stay away from that. That's what I'm sent in the kit, so I thought I'd give it a go. Don't really know what to think of it, but that's what I'm doing for now until that runs out, and then I'll get the best that the hardware store around here can offer me from there. I'm going with just priming all of the mating surfaces, and well, you end up with overspray since it's a spray paint, and that ends up covering a bit more. But the plan is just to prime the mating surfaces rather than religiously prime everything. It's a big debate online whether you prime everything religiously or you prime the mating surfaces, or even if you just don't prime anything at all, especially given it's T6061 T6, T6 being the temper. But it's a aluminum alloy that's fairly corrosion resistant to begin with, in contrast to some of the aluminium that's used in other designs. But yeah, going with a middle ground, priming all the mating surfaces and just sticking with that. Realistically, if I'm spending this much time and effort building an aircraft or putting together a kit, I'm not going to be just storing it outside anyway. And being a VFR registered as a microlight in New Zealand, you're really not going to be flying it into weather, getting it wet and whatnot. So I think priming just the mating surfaces is probably a fair enough middle ground that's not going to cause issues down the line. But we'll see, I guess. I'll let you know 30 years down. Well, I've got all the parts for the skeleton of the rudder over there and drying. I'm not going to be able to assemble that and pop any rivets until at least tomorrow, maybe longer. So I've started getting all the parts for the tail, the horizontal stabilizer. These here will be the spars. You'll see all the part numbers for these will start with 75T, T meaning tail. I've got 3 of the spars for that over here, and then I've picked out a lot of the ribs, some of the spar doublers in here, just bits of owl angle, and probably won't need this one for a while. That's the trim tab. So I'm going to make a start on some of this, not in too much of a hurry, but got my manual sitting over here, and I'll just quietly start piecing things together and doing a lot of the filing and deburring and all the boring stuff. But with that said, let's get into it. So far, this really has been quite straightforward. This is the rear spar of the horizontal stabilizer, and it comes with these. You put these doublers, which look like this. These are the doublers for the front spar, which is the next thing to do. And so they just get put right down along. They don't go all the way, but they go most of the way. They go up to there. There'll be the end of it. And they just go on both sides. Really is impossible to put them in wrong, because all these holes are all matched in the L pieces themselves. So they've all got the holes drilled, and you sit them on top of the holes already pre-drilled in the spar, and they already line up. I haven't seen any that don't. And then you go through and you drill through them to a number 30 size drill bit, which is very slightly bigger than what the holes are already pre-drilled at, and that's just the last thing to line them up, get them to the right size for an A4 rivet. In fact, I can probably show you. So if I take an A4 rivet and so take these holes pre-drilled at the side, rivet goes in that one. See, rivet doesn't really go into this one, doesn't want to fit, but then it's almost there. But then you take these ones that you've run through with the number 30 bit, and the rivet just pops straight into them. So you're just enlarging them ever so slightly, but you got these pieces clamped to it. So you're just locking everything together and drilling them out to the size. So very straightforward. And the builder's manual is very easy to follow. and it's actually easier to put together than the builder's manual. See, the builder's manual goes on and says mark a line 10mm from the outboard of the pre-drilled holes that are 7-10mm from the centre of the rest bar. And in practice, you can just take your piece and it only goes in one way. In the middle, there's these larger holes, so you can line them up and go to the holes at the end. There's really not much you can get wrong about that. Very straightforward. Anyway, with that said, the next step is to do the same thing, but for the front spar. So I'll grab the front spar and I'll do the same thing. Get these doublers, clear code to that. Front spar clear coat in place with the doublers and all drilled out to a number 30. I was actually able to put these clear coats in the holes before they were expanded to the number 30, so that's how I held it. I just chucked some of them through and then I went and drilled all the spaces in between, and then I moved them all over one and then all of them over one right down to the end, and then went and just drilled the hole behind every cleco out to number 30. And that's what I've got up to. The next part in the guide is to get a, you'll see up here, part number, standard L angle. And I'm to find a standard L angle and cut it to 100mm. So the hard part, I think, is going to be finding this part, the standard L, because I've got parts sitting over there, I've got parts everywhere. And somewhere there'll be a part labeled L, I guess. I think on the tail pick list, does it have, that must be this one here, the stabilizer L angle? Surely, that must be it. Can't think of anything else that would be, yeah, it must just be that stabilizer L angle. So it does have a part number beside it. Anyway, I'll go hunting, see what I can find. I think I found it. It is indeed just labelled L, 4 feet standard. And the thickness here under T equals 0.025. I think that's in inches, but I could be wrong. Anyway, pretty sure that is the part number. There's a whole bunch of them here. And I'm assuming it is this part. It's given a part number, but in the manual it's just listed as a standard L. So I'm assuming that's because normally if you were to buy just the tail kit, or yeah, I think you can buy the tail kit separately, then it would come with enough standard L angle for the tail, but I'm also guessing that these are used elsewhere in the build and some of the other components as well. Anyway, I will unwrap this and measure out my 100mm of standard L and get that cut. How cool is that? I've got maybe half of the skeleton, oh probably more than half of the skeleton for the rear stabilizer clear coat together. I have not drilled out to size all of these ribs yet. You'll see these are the smaller clear coats, the silver ones, and some of these holes are closer to the A4 rivets, so that's what those clear coats would go in. But the holes in the rib are a lot smaller. You'll see that hole's there in the middle, smaller than the likes of these, which are for the A4 rivets. So these all these three holes, all the holes on the ribs get drilled out to A4. But I am presented with somewhat of a practical problem. These ones not too bad. I could get my drill and drill through from this side. And actually, now that I look at it, that one there is in the wrong place. They should be down there. like that one. That one's in the right place. Anyway, the one that does end up without a nose rib, these being the nose ribs there, so that one won't have one, I can drill through from this side. That's all well and good. But when I get to one of these ones with the nose rib, ignore that being in the wrong place, then I have to drill these through, and from either that side or this side. And you want them to be all clear-coated together on probably 2 of the 3 holes while you drill them, so that as you drill them, they all end up being perfectly in alignment. So when you drop the rivets in, it can all be held together. Now that drill, way too big. It's not going to go in here. It's not even going to fit in there. Look at that. And there's no way it's going to fit in there. It's going to end up with a big angle, and ideally your holes are straight. So that's not going to do. And that brings me to the time when I'm going to actually need some air, because the air drill, you can see, is a heck of a lot smaller than that. And that's going to be able to get in here with a lot more clearance, and still slight angle, but I'll be able to drill these holes mostly straight. And I could probably even go through from the, not so good on the other side because you end up with a bigger angle there, but I'll be able to drill them through from this side. So I'm going to have to go and find an air supply, or probably more likely this is just going to sit here for a couple of days, a week. I'm up in Wellington later this week, so half of the week I won't be able to do much work on this. But it's pretty cool to get to this point. It's certainly, you find progress happening very quickly, at least at the start of the kit. That's what I found. The instructions are very straightforward. I haven't found anything that hasn't made sense or that's been hard to follow, and it feels like they've been well tuned over time to be accurate and easy to follow with no ambiguity. The drawings, I've been trying to look at the drawings and reference things. A lot of this I can sort of fit together and piece together. For example, these ribs, you'll notice how they've got a big curve on the bottom. Well, they only really go one way, because the front of it, handily labelled front, is shorter distance this way than the rear that way. And you can tell that the bow or the curve in this lines up with this frontal, because that's not 90 degrees. It extends down there. So you could just slap these together and look at the parts and know how they go together quite easily. But I've been trying to reference it with the drawings and make sure I understand where I would find the information. I need some more front brackets. I also reference the drawings for them, just so that I'm getting a hang of what the drawings look like and how I would use them, because it's likely that other parts of the kit won't be so straightforward, and I will need to refer to the drawings to really understand how something goes together. The builder's manual, so the one with all the photos that's very easy to follow, that's not meant to be the source of truth. Your drawings are meant to be the source of truth. If the manual disagrees with what you're seeing, then the drawings is what you're meant to refer to. So I want to be able to understand them, follow them, and I'll probably need to use them and probably need to understand them at some point. So trying to get the hang of it while things are simple. Or maybe the rest of the project will be a breeze and as easy as this. I don't know. We'll find out together, I suppose. These videos of me assembling a kit plane are not meant to be instructional. I think fun content is what I'm going for. If someone who is not into aviation at all stumbles across this but finds it interesting, then I think that would be mission accomplished. There's channels that I watch on YouTube, like people building boats or retrofitting boats, and I don't have a boat, I'm not nautical at all, but the engineering in it is just fascinating. So with that, I thought maybe I should give a bit more context as to what this actually is. And I've been referring to it as the horizontal stabilizer, which is what it is, but what actually is that? So I got some photos. Well, that might be a bit hard to see. Well, can I zoom in? No, let's try that. So the horizontal stabilizer is this section that goes across here, the back of the plane. So the front part of it, or the bulk of it, is what we call the horizontal stabilizer. And then at the back of it, this one labelled elevator, that's a control surface. So that goes up or down, it moves. And that's how you make the plane go up or down effectively. Now this rudder, so that bit there, or no, I should probably say vertical stabilizer / rudder, kind of referred to as similar thing. This section here is what I've been building to start with. So that's what's currently being painted, and that's in parts over here. The most critical part being this big long one. So that's what we call the vertical stabilizer main spar, something like that. And so that goes right up the middle, somewhere in the middle of the elevator. Now of course the shape is not what I'm building. Mine's going to be a Zenith style 750. Some people call them ugly, but whatever, no, really, just built that way. Sky Jeep. And yeah, so main spar goes up somewhere in the vertical stabilizer.